AM Studios, brought to you by Old Mutual.
Wiseman, welcome to the MEX platform.
Thanks for having me, RJ. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate you coming through. There's obviously a lot we need to get through, but I thought certainly as an artist, there were some questions I wanted to get out of the way, specifically with regards to Capasso. But I think let's start here. I mean, can you give us a bit of your background, where you come from? How did you get to your position as if I'm correct, head of legal and business affairs at Capasso?
Yeah, it's actually COO now. That's the erstwhile provision position at the time. Yeah.
Congrats.
So, so man, I think it was a long journey, but the long and short of it, I think I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to know exactly what I wanted to do when I went into varsity, right? I knew for a fact I wanted to merge whatever I would have done in my varsity career, which happened to be law. So I studied law, and I knew I wanted to merge that with what I really, really enjoyed doing, which was the music stuff. Throughout my varsity career, I used to be a DJ, club DJ, radio producer. So I did a host of different industry-related things. And that was, in essence, the birth of the way in which I needed to figure out. So the law was the way to ensure that my mother got off my back, because I had a formal degree.
Right.
And then what was then left up to me was to figure out how do I then merge that formal degree with the passion I had for the industry at the time. And the most lateral way there is intellectual property. Like, it's the easiest thing if you are in the legal field to play a role within the industry. And also it was a very cruel understanding or epiphany that occurred to me that one, the talent that I thought I had wasn't going to be enough. So there was a point where I was at a crossroads to say, do I pursue the DJ career professionally, or do I try to find a way in which I played safe with the legal qualification and then make that into a music-related element? And being a very risk-averse person by nature, the latter became the easier route. And also because just on assessment, I didn't know any lawyers in the industry. I didn't know anyone with a legal background in the industry who understood it well. So to me, that was a very clear route to take, because it was less traveled and I could make a mark. And luckily I got a shot through Capasso, started being as the legal assistant there. Then, and from there it just grew up until today, man. And so my career trajectory has been completely intertwined with the organization's trajectory, which both have been very very upwardly mobile, if I may say.
I mean, what's interesting to me is what you. It's amazing that you came to that, I suppose, epiphany. But that you knew you still wanted to be in the industry, and you found ways to stay within it. You were realistic, and I think these are great things to hear. You know, the only way I can relate personally as an artist is, you know, I studied music, but I specifically studied vocal coaching. And I think it's because somewhere in the back of my head, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be some kind of star performing on stages or releasing music. I don't know what's going to happen with all of that stuff. It's important to, but I want to be in the music industry. I know that. I know that without a doubt. And so that was my route. And I think it's a great lesson for all artists or people who want to be in the industry to take. And I think it was a really cool way that you got into it, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask this in a way, you know, there's those For Dummies books. I don't know, carpentry for dummies, or how to survive a lockdown for dummies, or cooking for dummies, or whatever it may be. I mean, there's so many organizations that represent artists in South Africa. I mean, off the top of my head, you know, obviously there's the SAMRA that most artists will know. There's SAMPRA, there's RISA. I know there's an offshoot of RISA called RAV, and I'm probably missing tons. Capasso is there as well. How would you describe what Capasso is and what Capasso does if you're trying to explain it in a sort of for dummies format?
Yeah, funny enough, RJ, just as an offshoot before I get back to the question, the For Dummies book is how I learned how to DJ. I literally had to read that book. I had been trying forever, and I couldn't get like beat counting. I couldn't get beat matching right till I read it in a book, and suddenly the other penny dropped, and then that's how I got into it. But back to the question. So in essence, Capasso is a collecting society like most of those collecting societies. The differentiator is in that we focus on the reproduction right. So we focus on whenever your song is being copied, reproduced in any way, that's where we focus. But also, incidentally, we've also created a niche in licensing digital platforms. So Capasso has been in charge of licensing digital platforms, at least from a songwriter's perspective, not only for South Africa, but throughout the continent. So we license digital platforms throughout the continent, from Cape to Algeria, for instance. And that's the niche and the role we play continentally in terms of ensuring that songwriters throughout the continent are compensated fairly, at the right price, and regularly. So that's the main thing that Capasso really is strong at, licensing and distributing of digital royalties, particularly from streaming platforms. As you know, streaming is the main way of at least consuming music nowadays. So it was very important back in 2014 when the organization was formed that we carved out a lane for African songwriters. And it was a critical part to ensure that whenever a Spotify, Deezer, and Apple Music, or any of the DSPs, by DSP I mean digital service providers, come into the continent, they know that it's one, they can easily access all the rights that they need to access through a conglomerate like Capasso, because we aggregate all the rights via all different CMOs across the continent, so that we can offer a one-stop shop and one-stop solution for these DSPs coming into the continent, but also a guaranteed way for songwriters to know that their money will come out. Every 3 months we're running a distribution. So it's a way to ensure that the wheel keeps spinning in a way that's satisfactory to everyone.
Understand. So
the DSPs,
If I'm correct, so let's say I release my music through a digital distribution company. The report backs that I'm getting are connected to Capasso. Would that be correct?
Not necessarily connected, but we use the same. So in essence, when your song is now being streamed, there'll be a digital sales file that Apple Music would send to your aggregator, and that same digital sales file will be sent to us.
Okay.
We'll process it for your songwriting element, and then your aggregator will process it for your performing or record label element. Understood. Yeah. That, I mean, look, you know, I like to think I know a lot because I'm old now, but at the same time, I didn't actually make that connection. So thanks. Yeah.
Just something partially off topic. I worked on Idols for many years in the previous decade. I worked on various other shows like Clash of the Choirs. And we always had to come to, I know at some point it was Norm, and then eventually it became Capasso. And we were only allowed to use songs that were cleared through Capasso. Okay? Had to be 100% if I'm correct. Okay?
Yeah.
And I was always sad because a lot of my material wasn't there. Specifically, a big song of mine called Change the World. And a lot of artists would be like, oh, but I want to do that song of yours. You know, it would be so cool because, you know, you're on the show and then we do your song. And it was never there. And obviously in my head, I was like, why is it not there? I mean, how does that work? How do these, I mean, look, I've got tons of questions about this, but how's the process? How do you get your song available for these shows, really?
Yeah, thank you very much. RJ, that is a very crucial question, and thank you for asking it, and thank you for using yourself as an example, because it showcases how much revenue you lose if the metadata of the music isn't there. So where the process starts is in the notification process. That song needs to be notified into our databases 100%. So if RJ Benjamin did the song with who was the DJ that remixed that song? I forgot the name now.
Dr. Duda.
Dr. Duda. So that RJ as the songwriter, Dr. Duda as the co-songwriter in that song, all the parties would have needed to notify Capasso. So we would know we have a song. We know RJ controls 50% of the song, but we don't know who the other 50% will belong to. That then becomes difficult for the song to be used. It doesn't only apply from a Capasso perspective, but it applies even from a sync perspective. If brands want to use the song, they need to be, their first point of call usually is us. They'll ask, okay, you have this music, what this song on your database, what does the metadata say? Who do I need to speak to? Because they won't know who publishes RJ. Is it direct or through somebody else? They won't know who publishes Dr. Duda. They might not even know who else might have played a role in the creation and the songwriting of that song. They might just know RJ as the performing artist. So it's crucial that the metadata comes in. So this is pivotal. It affects the way in which you can earn from not only digital service providers when your song has actually been used, but it also affects whether or not your song gets used. Because a lot of people will only use it if we can give them a guarantee that everything in there is controlled holistically.
I mean, that's a huge one.
It's absolutely pivotal that we get metadata in there. It's absolutely pivotal. So you send the metadata via notifications. So there's a notification of works form that you'll find on the website. And in essence, it just tells us who the songwriters are, full names, what are their shares in those songs. And generally, you'll find that a trick that we try to advise is that sort out your splits and use a split sheet. You can even find a dummy split sheet on the website. We've created that as a pro forma thing, so that you know for a fact what the shares are, so that you don't have a dispute at a later stage when it's time to notify and when the song eventually becomes huge.
I mean, just what you've already said lays it down and lays it out so nicely in terms of why registering with Capasso is so crucial. And not only, I know when I was studying, like there was this thing, and I don't quite know where it is now, because that was over 20 years ago. But we were like, no, you must just register with SAMRO. You know, everything always seems to be around SAMRO, and it's not the case. I mean, what you're laying out, Jay, is that it's just as crucial, especially given how important you are from a digital perspective, to register with Capasso, notify Capasso, the same as you should be doing with SAMRO or SAMPRO.
Correct. I always make an example of a maths example that our teachers used to teach us when we were doing maths with SAMRO and Capasso. What you do to the denominator, you do to the numerator. So in essence, what you notify Capasso, you notify to SAMRO. What you notify SAMRO, you notify to Capasso. And it's absolutely pivotal because those are the two organizations that represent songwriters. So we are, in essence, the flip side of the same coin. So in order to ensure that your holistic earnings from a songwriting perspective come your way, whether it's 50 cents or 50,000, you need to ensure that you've covered both bases. And then you then add to that all the other, because usually it's seldom that you find a musician who plays only one role in this industry. It's not to say that if you're a performing artist who wrote that you forego one of those two roles that you play. Those are the roles you play. Or you could find yourself as a songwriter who then becomes a session musician. It doesn't mean that when that song earns, you'll only earn in one capacity. You should earn holistically. That's why it's become such an important way to ensure you tick all the boxes, because the revenues then make sense when they combine.
Right, absolutely. And you want to make sure your revenue stream is everything that it should be, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into a couple of personal questions here, and I don't mean that in some kind of implication way. There's not going to be any scandals here. So look, I mean, you've made a success out of yourself in the music industry. What would you say has been your biggest lesson that has actively informed that success?
I think the first one is you don't know what you don't know. So that then keeps you learning. My biggest pet peeve in the industry is when asking a question and you get a response that says, no, this is how we've always done it. That neither tells you why it's been done, nor confirms that it should be done that way. All it does is tells you, well, this is just the history. So one of the biggest tricks I use in trying to acquire knowledge is always asking the question why. Because when you get the why, you understand the genius of everything. You understand why this particular law works the way it works. And if you want to change it, you understand what you need to change in order to ensure that it still gets the crux of what it was trying to achieve. You understand why a practice in the industry is as is, so that you can figure out ways. So as long as you ask why all the time, and you know and understand the fact that you will always have something new to learn, that to me has been the biggest points, the two biggest things that inform how I progressed in the industry.
Brilliant. I mean, I know a lot of independent artists often feel scared to ask questions, particularly to guys like yourself, professionals like yourself. I know firsthand, I've sent you an email and you very kindly responded with a detailed email. And so I think it's great what you're saying. And I definitely think it's important for young independent artists to understand that they shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. Ask away.
Especially if you're independent, RJ, because you need to understand what it is that you are replacing a label or a publisher with. So if you're no longer going to have the functionality of a machine and 20 employees actively working your record every day, you need to figure out what it is that they were going to do, and you need to then figure out creatively as a one-man or five-man team, how are you going to actually replace that? So if you're going to be independent, it's absolutely crucial that you ask these questions so you know how to maneuver.
That makes sense, man. Okay, so next question. Who of your peers do you look to for inspiration, and what motivates that?
Okay. Funny enough, I think broken clock is right twice a day. So what about active human beings with brains that function? So I draw inspiration from everybody I work with, from the staff within my team to my CEO, to my counterparts, to almost everyone really that I interact with. There's always something new, perspective to learn and gain from. So that's the first part. And this has been the case since the days I used to do my role model orals. I always found a lot to learn from the people I was working with. Initially, my biggest role model was my sister. And to this point, even today, as I raise my kid, I want to emulate a lot of the things she did with her kids. So I draw quite a lot from different people within the industry that I interact with. But in the spirit of giving people their flowers, there's some mentionable names that I could put out, like Jotan Materiro, who heads up Capasso, is a good one. There's a gentleman by the name of Joel Baloy. He is in fact, he's the only guy who's written a PhD on musical works in the country. So if you're looking at the theory around the legalities of how our copyright law, in as far as it protecting songwriters, has developed. That guy has written a PhD thesis on that, the only in the country, in fact, and should probably inform quite a few more. So he's a huge inspiration. Guys like Nick Matsukis, Notando Mikoko, those are the people are, and it's also crucial, RJ, to surround yourself with people you can always nestle from their knowledge, because
Right.
there's a saying that says, learn from other people's mistakes because you can't make them all. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So similarly, we learn from other people's success because you can't have all the success. So you need to learn a lot from those people. If you have people that you can pick up the phone, call, say, listen, can I run this past you? Have that back and forth. It drives a whole lot of things. And then lastly, I think there's a gentleman by the name of Tumsani Morolong who runs Morolong Incorporated, independent lawyer in the field also. Guys like that actually keep me motivated every day.
Oh, man. Well, look, just to quickly mention him, but Nick Matsukis is deeply responsible for my how I got into the industry, the music school that I studied at, which no longer exists, but he funded it, he built it, he opened it. It's loosely connected to the Academy of Sound Engineering, and so I'm deeply grateful to Nick. Definitely one of my mentors as well.
Yeah, brilliant man, brilliant. And I recommend everybody to check out his book. If you want a starting point on the South African industry and the legalities thereof, it's a brilliant book to have. Great.
Anyone watching, please go check out that book. Maybe just Google Nick Matsukis' book. I'm not quite sure what the name is, but it'll come up. So look, again, I know when I was studying, and I know when a lot of musicians studying, the mindset of is I just want to be great at whatever my instrument is, or I just want to make great music, and I want to sing, be the best singer, the best pianist, the best guitarist, the best drummer, whatever it may be. And more often than not, particularly when we're studying, we neglect the other side of the business side of the industry. In fact, one of my lecturers was a guy named Dave Alexander, who at the time, David Alexander runs Sheer. And at the time, he was teaching us business, and I did not do well in business. And I can tell you, I learned the hard way by not necessarily reading contracts that I was signing when I suddenly got into the industry. I just want to know from you, how important do you think it is that artists have an understanding of the business side, as well as
it's absolutely pivotal. Yeah, it's absolutely. Dave is actually one of those people. Also, when I was listing names, Dave is also one of those people who, and from an entrepreneurial perspective, very few people you can learn from within the publishing industry in the country that would be better. I probably can't even name one that would be better than learning from Dave. He's built his company from scratch, and it was solely focused on African songs. And that's a very crucial distinction from the record companies. So that's one. But from back to your question, there's no way you can run a successful business, because that's what entrepreneurs are. They're SMMEs, they're embodiments of SMMEs. So as an independent musician, you are a functional business, and there's no need for you to be an expert in everything. But there's a need for you to understand what you seek from those experts. If you have a manager, or whether it's a business manager or a personal manager, you need to know what it is that they need to be bringing to the table to be part of the team. If you have a radio plugger, you need to know what it is that they're going to do to be part of the team. If you have a record label publisher, you need to be very aware of what the deliverables are, how are they bringing or adding to your business, and that's the only way you can evaluate whether or not that relationship is fruitful for you. Without understanding the business, it becomes very difficult for you to run your organization the way it's supposed to be run. And also, we end up with a lot of blanket advice. That blanket advice is dangerous in the sense that it's not nuanced to you. And your business. Every business is different, just like every person is different. So if you're an independent musician, your trajectory might be different. But in order for you to understand what fits for you, you need to understand exactly how you can leverage your talent in the business world and who you need to be able to get the most value out of the business. And you can't do that without an understanding exactly of what the business of music really is. And without that, you run the risk of waking up 7 years later going, wow, that contract I signed wasn't great. And that stems from not knowing which person to speak to, how to speak to that person, and what it is that that person is going to bring, what value. Because most of the times I always say, you'll sign a contract and it's a 3-album deal with an advance of, say, maybe 250 an album. That's 750,000 rands worth of just business already. This is besides the incidentals that are going to come in for promotions, all the other things, perform. And it's from a career perspective, those 3 albums you create early on in your career are probably going to be your magnum opus somewhere in there. So when you're looking at value, spending that 5,000 rands consulting with an attorney, the right attorney, because also there's a difference between just going to any lawyer and going to a music industry lawyer.
Absolutely.
Who will then give you the advice that is specific to that. You can get the most value. Whereas you'll find people going, I don't have the 5,000 rand to spend now, but you're entering into a 750,000 rand agreement.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, spending that little value of 5,000 rands consulting with the right legal person will aid you to ensure you get the most value out of the 750. Now you're gambling. And I always make this example of Master P. Famously got the best distribution deal with Priority back in the days for his label. Little known fact, before he got that label, he went and spent $25,000 at the time consulting with what was Michael Jackson's attorney, who then told him exactly what he needed to go ask for when he went to Priority to get that distribution deal. So for an independent at the time, because this was back in early 2000s, in the 90s actually. Yeah.
I think it was in the late 90s,
$25,000 is a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money even now.
Yeah.
But he spent that $25,000 and was able to walk into Priority Records and get the best hip hop distribution deal known to man at the time.
Incredible.
Value.
I love what you just said, man. Okay, let's shoot for a couple of quick questions here. Africa continues to, people keep saying it's going to be the next big thing. Do you agree with the statement?
Yeah, I think primarily from a production perspective, I think music for us is inextricably linked with everything we do. Everything that we are about as a people, as a continent, is musically inclined. So I think there's a lot of value we are going to add to the industry. And also now, when you think about it, there's a lot of influence that we will have in the mainstream popular arts as a whole, not just music, whether you're talking film, just the creative industry as a whole. There's a lot that the world is going to come and look for from us. It's the new gold in essence. So and because of the cultural nuances that we have, there's over 2,000 languages on the continent, over 1 billion people, and however many multitudes of cultural nuances and cultures that exist within the industry. So there's a plethora of ways in which we can influence the world and enrich it, because creative works are cultural assets in a way, and we have a host of that. And we have a lot of that in abundance, and we can offer that to the world. But crucially, it's going to be around how we then manage the business of that.
But that's where Capasso comes in to some degree.
Yes. So that's where organizations so I always say any organization or company that wants to partake in the music industry on the continent needs to carry a very clear mandate of education. You cannot run away from educating the industry if you want it to function. If you are pure of heart and with pure intentions coming into the industry, you'll understand that there's a crucial mandate that every one of these organizations needs to play, which is to educate the masses around what it is that the internationals are coming for. Because they're spending a lot of money coming here now, a lot of money. Some of the deals I've seen are running close to 8-9 figures. And those are huge monies for African intellectual property. And we need to then know how to handle it. We need to then know how to speak to our governments to give us the best fighting chance from a legislative perspective. They need to create environments that don't stifle the creativity, but rather actually encourage it. They need to create ways in which when we are exporting it, we are exporting it in the best possible way we can export it, not out of necessity. Right now we have artists will tell you that their biggest market is external, not because they of anything else. They have enough supporters locally, but the environment is not conducive enough for those supporters to support them in real rand terms. So you'll find that a lot of the money will be external. When the money is external, the externals can dictate how you move.
Right.
So you then need a way in which we safeguard and such that anybody who interacts with our music and our industry does so on our terms.
Gotcha.
And in a term that most favor the continent.
But Capasso would be a part of that safeguarding from what you've explained already.
Yeah, crucially. And that's part of that's what informed the aggregation of the CMO rights, the songwriter rights into one hub. Because the more united we are as CMOs across the continent, the stronger our voice and the more we can do for our songwriter members and our publisher members. So that's crucial. We need to be able to work as a unit continentally and ensure that the voice of the continent is, because the divide and rule is easy to do when there's money involved. Because they can easily give you what you think is a lot if you are an individual. But when you're looking at a holistic thing, suddenly the amount of money is not that big. So when you have the macro view of licensing, it helps. It helps understand exactly what is at stake and what that would cost and how we can best leverage our pool of rights as the continent to ensure that the best value is received.
Understood. Okay, quick final question. Do you see any other anything else in the industry overtaking streaming as it stands, or is streaming really something that's going to be here for a long time?
So eventually something will overtake it, but there's still a lot of penetration to happen. World over, we only Spotify is only at 256 million users. Here in the continent, even less so. We still have a long way to go. I think we'll reach saturation when we're probably sitting at around 20 million South Africans at least who are subscribed, and we're far from that number. So we still, for the next few years, we're still going to see quite a lot of ways in which streaming will shape the industry. But crucially, I think virtual reality will come in, particularly because of things like COVID. I think COVID has probably accelerated the live industry probably by 5 years. Because it's forced everybody to think and say, okay, we need to be looking at live streams. How can we create environments for our audience to be with us when they're at home? And I think that is going to be the next frontier, how to figure out ways to monetize the user who's at home to ensure that, because also touring is taxing on the body of a musician. The older you get, the less ability you have to tour. But you then still need to figure out ways to get an income. How do you monetize your fans? And I think that's where virtual reality and these live concerts are going to start being a huge thing. When you look at companies like Live Nation, have lost close to $3 billion US dollars because of COVID. Because they're not going to fold, and they've just got some additional funding, chances are they'll spend another 2 or 3 billion trying to figure out how not to lose 3 billion again in the next pandemic.
Right.
And what that is going to do, that kind of money going into R&D from a live and virtual reality standpoint is just going to catapult this industry way, way, way forward. So we're probably going to jump 5 years ahead. And by the time June or next year ends, we're going to be having a completely different live streaming experience than we are currently having. We'll be looking at things like Oculus. And I think also we saw what happened with Fortnite, with Travis Scott, where he was performing live within the game, and a lot of people were tuning in via Twitch. And those sort of things are probably going to get refined a bit more, and they're going to be a lot more immersive, the experiences, and we're going to pay for that. And chances are, I think even from when the sector opens up, probably next year, we're probably always going to have, we're never going to go back to a completely dry live show. You're probably going to have a live show that has a live stream element in it, because now there's proof of concept. The public wants it, particularly us who might have grown up with a particular musician, but we're at that age now where you can't necessarily be out on a Thursday. You have kids and whatever, but you still want to partake and actually see and experience the musician, because nothing beats live music, really. So you still want to be in that experience. We're probably going to be the target market where if the ticket is 100 rands, we'd probably be more than willing to pay $50 and stay at home and watch.
That's true.
So,
and I would imagine that this is already making Capasso a busy place, and the next few years is going to get even worse. Right.
The number of licenses we've had to put in place for the live stream sessions has been incredible, particularly from the gospel space, churches, and you would know from a licensing perspective, churches are notoriously difficult to license. But from a live stream perspective, we've seen quite a huge number. In fact, I think the church licenses probably grew maybe 400-fold percentage-wise from pre-COVID to now. It's a really huge impact that has had, and it's probably going to continue. The more live events we have, the more of these we're going to need to be licensing, and it's incredible, man. It's incredible. I've been more busy since lockdown started than I was before lockdown.
Lockdown life, and you got a little one, so good luck with that.
You know, hey.
Tell me, well, I suppose it's just an observation, but I think for people watching this, it's so clear that like you're approachable, and I think so many times in the industry, again, there's this fear of approaching people, and I think, you know, what guys like yourself, I think of Karabo at Samro. You seem like approachable guys. You seem like guys that people don't have to be afraid. If they have questions or queries, you know, it's great to have guys like yourself, young guys who are have their hands on the pulse, but you know, you don't seem like I don't know, you're gonna be like, get out of my face, like I don't want to talk to you about this stuff. You know, it's just great, man. So I mean, just personally from my side, I just want to say I appreciate you, man.
Okay, thanks, man. Thanks. And I think it's also when we're working with industry, we have to understand that we are an extension of your business as a musician. So at any given moment, our value is in as much as you are successful. Without your success, our value is non-existent. So I think that's where that element comes in, where even if I wanted to be arrogant, I can't be, because whatever sense of self-importance I would have stems from the very same people I need to be working with.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe just lastly, if people want to get hold of Capasso, if people do want to send questions through, what's the process?
Oh, perfect, man. So we have multiple ways of getting a hold of us. We have obviously the phone line 011-447-8870. That's the landline. Then we also have social media platforms at Capasso Hub. So it's at CAPASSOHUB on all platforms. So that's another way. Then we have obviously the email element, which the general queries is info@capasso.co.za. Alternatively, my email is wiseman@capasso.co.za. And just send any questions, man. And I think primarily what also I'd like to say is that I think people always have a very adversarial stance when they approach CMOs. But the idea is, as I said, we're an extension of your business. We're there. If there's some sort of dissatisfaction you have, we're there to try and make sure that that dissatisfaction is dealt with. And secondly, that the ongoing relationship is fruitful from that point going forward. It is an administrative process, so there might be one or two errors that happen because we are dealing with data a lot. But where the idea is to then collaboratively figure out where the error is, if there is an error, and figure out the best way to fix it.
Perfect, man. Well, listen, on behalf of MEX, and in particular, thank you very much and so much for coming and being a part of MEX10. It's a huge thing.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me.
It's been great,
and
man.
Congratulations to 10 years. 10 years is not a small feat. Congratulations to yourself, Martin, and the gang, man. It's a lot. 10 years, this doesn't just come by that easy.
Thanks.
And MEX is a great platform, and I try and make sure I'm there every year.
We greatly appreciate it, man. All the best. Thanks, Wiseman. Take care of yourself, man.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Bye.
Music has changed. How it makes us feel never will. The time is now to visit ampstudios.co.za.